friends. Welcome back to another episode of Jack Amplified. I am your host, Michael Braithwaite. I have the distinct pleasure of working with an incredible group of people, and more importantly, an incredible group of young people too, that just inspire me daily as the CEO of Jack.org. Every week we do something a little different. We have incredible guests on the show. This week is no exception to that. Today we're talking about something youth across Canada consistently tell us is the most important protective factor for mental health. What would that be? Well, that's community. And when young people feel connected, included, and valued, as we know, they're more resilient and more able to face the challenges that life throws at them. Community matters, folks. In this episode, we're going to explore how youth-led spaces like the Jack.org program, Jack Chapters, that we've been running basically since day one, since we Jack.org's origins in 2010, create belonging and purpose, and why community itself can be a powerful form of prevention. I'm not going to talk on my own because, listen, you turn it off right away. We bring on fantastic guests. Today, joining me for the conversation is Leyan Al-Mashita. Now, Leyan has been at the heart of building community on the ground, bringing peers together, creating spaces for support, and leading with openness and authenticity. Through her work, she's seen firsthand how chapters can make young people feel less alone, more connected, and more empowered to take care of their mental health. Leyan, I am so excited to have you here. Welcome to Jack Amplified.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction and the warm welcome.
No. Listen, I always get energized by these conversations, and I'm sure today is not going to be any different. I'm going to throw a bunch of questions at you. Of course, we just want to hear from you, your own personal experiences, whatever you're comfortable sharing. And so let's talk about first community. When you hear the word community, what comes to mind?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I think about when I think of community is my Iraqi community here in Mississauga. So I grew up with my family kind of all across the world. Like I had my grandparents in Jordan, I had cousins across the US. And so the family friends that we had here in Mississauga really became our community and like our family here. And so within this community, we had lots of like social gatherings, activities, and just really grew up with all of these people. And I think that's really what grounded my sense of community and my value for it, because I was able to see how much that had an impact on my childhood and how I grew up, and also my parents, just being able to feel more comfortable in this space that was so different for them. So they grew up in Iraq and then they moved here when they were around like 25 years old. So having that community here was really impactful for them, and yeah, and really helped them just feel more comfortable. And so that's the first thing that I think of when I think of community. But I would say the second part is that within this community, there were some, flaws as well. Like we're not all perfect. So when I'm talking about that, I'm referring to when it comes to mental health conversations. I would say that there was a bit of a gap when it came to education and literacy on mental health, and the lack of conversations about mental health was kind of difficult growing up. And so with Jack.org, that was something that I was able to help integrate within my community. So, I would go to a Jack.org meeting, I would learn about something like just maybe bipolar disorder, and then I would take those lessons and I would go home to my dinner table and I would start talking about these stories that I learned at Jack.org. And then that kind of has a ripple effect. So my parents will learn about it, maybe they'll go talk to their friends about it, and maybe they'll talk to their kids about it. And so in that way, community is kind of twofold. It's not only like the sense of warmth and belonging that I feel with my Iraqi family friends and cousins and family, but also being able to realize when there's a gap and something that needs addressing. And then for me, Jack.org was a community that I was able to learn those things and then take them home to my family, my Iraqi community, and try and foster that change in terms of mental health mindsets. So, yeah.
Very cool. My partner is from Ecuador, and she'll often talk about, when she first came to Canada, missing that sense of community, right? And then finding that sense of community within the Ecuadorians in Canada, adjusting together, working together, supporting one another in that journey, and then bringing those two worlds together. And, it's interesting too. We here quite often. We had a group from Taiwan come, they visited last week. And one of the coolest things they were doing was that they have made psychotherapy free of charge across Taiwan. Now, this is great in principle, right? In practice, it's very cool. But the trouble is, culturally, going to psychotherapy is seen as a bit of walk of shame, right? And so it's made available, but people aren't necessarily taking advantage of it as of yet because culturally it's seen as something that you don't do in our family, you don't do, and they're working hard to bridge that, having those conversations like you're talking about, so
Yeah.
people will take advantage of those free services.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree, and I'd say that like that's honestly one of the strengths of community as well is that you can use the connection that everyone feels with each other to make things like therapy, which might feel very foreign and different, more, accessible or something that you can be comfortable utilizing that resource. So, yeah.
And I think too within therapy, what we've realized too is that culturally, it makes a difference, right? Like you have to adjust for the different needs around your communities, your culture, that kind of thing too. So we've come a long way. Tell me about your connection to Jack.org. How did that start? And I know you got involved and you were part of a chapter. And then tell me about how that chapter made a real difference for someone in your work that you've done.
Yeah, for sure. So I got involved with Jack.org when I was in my first year of university. So first year of university for me was COVID year. It was online. So we had a club fair, but it was on Zoom and it was just a bunch of faces on a breakout room. But I actually joined a breakout room that had the presidents of that year, and I immediately felt so like warm and welcomed. And I was like, yeah, I'm definitely joining this. I didn't know that there was clubs that were about mental health. Like that was so, you know, distinct and like different for me. Like that wasn't something that I had ever encountered before. So I was super excited about it. And then I joined the first year as a first year intern. And over the course of my undergrad, I continued in the Jack chapter at Queen's University, which I guess I didn't say that, but I did my undergrad at Queen's. Um, which quick shout out was the birthplace of Jack.org. Yes, so I grew my role within the Jack chapter to being the summit president in my fourth year. So we had different sub segments of our club at Queen's because it was such a big club. So that was one part of my involvement with Jack.org, but I also started doing Jack Talks in second year of university, and that was a really great opportunity as well, just to learn more about mental health even myself, like learning all the things that go into a Jack Talk, solidifying some stories that I have when it comes to mental health, and then going out into community and sharing it with people. And sometimes people would come and share their stories back at the end of the Jack Talk, which was really warm and, a nice representation of the impact that Jack Talks were having. And then the last aspect of my Jack.org involvement is my network rep position last year, which this year will be the youth council. And I'm continuing in that role as well, which I'm really excited about. So going back to Jack chapters, I would say that I'm actually going to give an example of an impact that it had on me. So in my, like I mentioned, it was COVID, things were online. It was a really difficult transition. Being in high school, I was in a lot of extracurriculars. I was at school from like sunrise to sunset, just doing like announcements, musical practice, volleyball, whatever it was. And then starting university, being completely online, not having access to those spaces and that those things that gave me a sense of belonging anymore. It was definitely really difficult. And so being a part of Jack.org honestly gave me that sense of community that I was missing. Our meetings were on Zoom, but even still, I felt so connected to everyone that was in those meetings. There'd be just like silly things that our presidents would do for us, like, oh, set your background as a funny picture of yourself, or like set your background as a place like you wish you were right now. And so I think that space that I was able to really grow was really important for me in that transition period for me. And it also gave me access to like mentors that I still look to for guidance and inspiration. Like I became a Jack.org speaker actually because the president in my first year was a Jack.org speaker, and I was so amazed and in awe of the work that she was doing. I was like, oh, I'd love to do this myself as well. And so the specific story that I'll share is when I was in the end of first year, I had a family friend die by suicide, and this was a really difficult period in my life. And having already been a part of Jack.org, I was able to kind of use the lessons that I was learning within Jack.org to apply to my own grieving process. And also, like I was saying, there's a lot of stigma in my Iraqi community. And so being able to kind of learn things in the chapter and then go home and share them with my family was kind of my way of
Mhm.
channeling my grief into action and trying to do something about this,
Mhm.
really big crisis that I was going through. So that was a really big impact that Jack chapters had on me. And then even like we would have members meetings where there's like the members coordinators would host these meetings that were about different mental health topics, and then we'd get to just talk about them with other youth in at Queens. And so we'd had a session that aligned completely with like what I was going through, and I felt like that kept on happening. Like it would be something about grief, something about dealing with academic stress, or something about dealing with like the online environment. And so being able to discuss those things with other youth was really helpful for me, and just felt really warm. And I think, like I said, that's the biggest thing about community for me is that sense of warmth. So yeah, I think maybe there were a lot of stories in there, but I would say that Jack chapters definitely had a huge impact and difference for me in my own undergrad experience.
Oh, it's just wonderful. Thank you for the courage to share. And they're all great stories, right? Like, obviously, it had an impact on you. It's great. We hear a lot, probably with one of the biggest epidemics um, that is affecting young people across Canada and around the world is actually loneliness, right? And that everyone just wants that kind of sense of belonging. Why do you believe belonging? And Jack.org really kind of operates in that sense of in that lane of early intervention, prevention before you go into crisis. Why do you think belonging is so important when we talk about prevention?
Yeah. And I think that connects directly to what I was just saying, where I was already involved with Jack.org. So I had already found that sense of connection with the people that I was doing Zoom calls with. And so when I was going through something like a crisis, I was able to use those connections and use that environment as a tool to navigate that difficult time. And I think that sometimes when we go through difficult things, it's a lot harder to start doing something that's helpful for you. Whereas if you were already doing something, it's easier to continue with it and use it as a tool in that difficult time. So like being involved with Jack.org proactively helped me during the difficult time in my life. So I would say that belonging is just a way that we build up our resilience and help to prevent like the catastrophizing of difficult times. Like when we go through really difficult things,
Yeah.
if we have that belonging as a grounding and as a framework, it makes going through tough things a lot easier. And I'd also say that the people that give me that sense of belonging, so whether it's through like when I play volleyball, my volleyball team, or when I'm singing like the other people in my choir, like whatever it is, um, just knowing that those people are there, whether you're going to talk about your difficult thing or you're just going to be in a choir practice with them, knowing that they're there gives you that sense of like, okay, I can do this. I belong to this community, and I know that like if I need anything, or if I'm just needing someone to be around, I could reach out to them. And so it just reduces that sense of isolation and that sense of like, oh, I'm going through this all by myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that belonging is prevention because it helps you feel more ready to handle difficult things when they come along, and also gives you some people to be around when you're dealing with difficult things.
Well, I think as odd as it might sound to people, I think because mental health is so often talked about now, and young people are, it's on the minds of so many, but is that when you're going through things like saying you're having high anxiety, you're feeling really down. I mean, there is that big feeling of no one understands. I'm on my own. Like, is anyone else? And I might be thinking that I'm uh, weird or odd or not accepting of that. And if the minute someone else says, and this is part of like with some of our programs and other programs outside of Jack.org, is that like when you say to your friend or some of that community we talked about, I'm feeling this way, and they're like, yeah, me too, man. Like, yeah, no, I totally get it. Like, you tell me about it. Oh, okay. So, all right, and just right, you can breathe. I'm not on my own. There's a community of people that understand me, get me, that I can, relate to. Is that right? Not to put
Yeah,
words in your
def
mouth.
no, for sure. I think, like, those members meetings that I was talking about, when it's a group of other people that are, my age, maybe, like, a few years older, and we're all talking about something like dealing with grief, and everyone's talking about different things that they've gone through, it's just so validating that, like, okay, I'm not the only person that's dealt with this in my life, and there's, like, lots of different resources that people will use, and maybe there's one that doesn't work for me, but maybe there are ones of those long lists that do work for me. And so I think that was really the value of the members meetings, was we were all sharing our experiences from completely different walks of life, but there was like some common thread or string that brought it all together. So yeah.
I'll tell. I got to tell you this funny story, and my daughter would be horrified. But also understanding it when she was, I have three adult daughters, but when they were younger, she was having a tough time, and she was talking to her mom about the tough time, and did not realize she was live streaming on Instagram, so it was out there, and so when she figured it out that she had poured just back, and that the Instagram universe had heard it, she was horrified, right? And we thought, oh man, this is going to crush her. But what ended up happening, the bright side to that, was all of a sudden all of these messages of support. And I felt this way too. I get it. And that's great. And she was like, whoa, really? And it was this weird online community that boosted her up, like not on purpose, but it was pretty cool. And so the power of others and your community to kind of surround you with that care, and it's accidentally, it was pretty cool to see it. I was so relieved because she was pretty shaken when she figured that out, as any kid would be. I mean, I grew up in a time where I didn't have to worry about that. I did a lot of things that I'm really grateful that social media was not around for, just silly kind of youth stuff. But community matters, whether it's online communities, whether it's a Jack chapter, or whether it's your cultural community too, that's wrapped around you. What do you think young people need most from their communities now?
hmm Yeah, I would say that a big thing that youth need in terms of communities is just simply having communities. I think that there's a lot of silos right now when it
Hmm.
comes to our lives, like especially as students, sometimes it can be difficult not to just like zero in on having to do well in school and then forgetting about like all the other aspects that exist in our schools, like clubs or intramurals or whatever it might be. So I would say just remembering that there are communities out there that we can access. And maybe like that also comes with the territory of like making communities more well known, I guess. Like maybe just more talk about what communities exist or just the value of communities. And I think that is something that's starting to spread a lot more on social media right now, which we'll get into a bit later. But I think that, yeah, remembering the value of community is really important for us as young people right now. And then I'd also say that having communities that reflect lived experiences. So for me, as I mentioned, I'm Iraqi Canadian, and going to Queens was a bit difficult sometimes
Hmm.
because there weren't a lot of communities where I felt super comfortable or like they felt right at home, like how I might have felt with my family friends here in Mississauga. And so having more communities that reflect like diversities and experiences, I think are really important. So just making space for these types of communities is really important. So within universities, like if there's just more funding for different types of communities to exist, I think that's a great way that that can happen. And then also kind of like leadership from different backgrounds also gives kind of inspiration for youth to create communities of like different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Like if I see a leader that's maybe like Arab that's having these like actually I have a family friend who hosts these really incredible community events that are just like there'll be spoken word poetry or they'll do like an outdoor picnic eating or whatever it is, and that gives me inspiration to be like, okay, I can host events that bring together my community, and it's not it makes it less like it's uncharted territory and so daunting. So I'd say that's something as well that can help in that sense. I remember in high school, I learned about this organization called Multiple Sclerosis Youth Council that was like completely youth led. Like there was no adults involved at all throughout the whole club, and I was so confused. I was like, how is this club running without any adults involved in booking spaces or managing the finances or anything? And then I got involved and ended up being president in grade 12 in high school, and I think that really emphasized to me that as youth we can do hard things or things that maybe we think aren't for us. Adults are supposed to be there to help us guide it, but really as youth we have this initiative and this understanding of ourselves and how we can host events that will bring out youth. And we all have our own like skills and knowledge. Like there were people who were the finance executives and they did great. And so just because it was a youth only space didn't mean that it wasn't as good. And I think I was trying to link it back to our communities in the sense that youth need, and like we need to be cognizant of the fact that we can create our own communities. We don't need an adult to be there to do it for us. Like we can just host a club that's completely led by youth, and that can be great and work well for us as well.
100%. I'll tell you something interesting, right? So I remember I have a long time background in kind of housing homelessness, youth homelessness, and I remember. So one of the interesting things that they've done around ending youth homelessness is they've done something in the U.S. called cash transfer. So instead of just putting youth into youth shelters, that kind of thing, they'll actually give a youth $2,000 a month, and then they can self-direct where they want to go and do with whatever. And automatically for a lot of adults, they're like, oh, if you give someone, a youth $2,000, they're going to go crazy, they're going to do blah, blah. And I remember at the time, someone said, you need to check your adultism, right? Like you're making a judgment based on the young person. And because what the facts showed is that when you give someone that money and they're seeing great results, they have choice, they can navigate, they know what they need. They need, if you're pointing in the right direction, the choice bit, and they're learning how to do it on their own. They're not being given, like, it's all those things, like huge success to your point of, just give young people the tools they need to get the job done. And man, will they amaze you every time, right, to do that. And I'm sure when there's young people like yourself involved, it's just going to happen for sure. So I have a couple more questions here. We go into a segment called Talk the Talk. You don't have to say it like that, but that's how I say it. This is where we take a closer look at the language we use around mental health. Language matters, and community and connection. And we kind of unpack these things around the issues that change how we understand and approach them. So for this episode, we're looking at the phrase, the price of community is inconvenient. Together, I want to hear, like, what does that mean? And help us through that.
Okay, for sure. So this is relating to what I was saying earlier, where I think community is something that's being talked about a lot more on social media recently, and it's really exciting to see. So there's these videos that say the price of community is inconvenience, and my interpretation of it is that if we want the value of having people in our lives or having that warmth that I talk about when it comes to having people around us that share our experiences or maybe don't, or just people to be around, unfortunately we're going to have to do things that inconvenience us. So for example, if there's an event that brings together different youth and I'm like, oh, that sounds so exciting, but I have class right until 7 and it starts at 7:15 and I'm so tired, I've been in class all day. It's like, yes, I could just sit at home, but then I won't be in this room with like lots of other young people who give me this sense of like, re-energizing and yeah. So I think that when we talk about the price of community as inconvenience, it's the fact that if you want the benefits of community, you unfortunately have to do some things that like won't be so ideal. Like I love to just sit and rot and just like read and like sit at home, but unfortunately if I want to make friends, I can't do that every day. Like I'm in this new chapter of med school, and it's like if I want to make friends, I really have to put myself out there and say yes to things that usually I wouldn't, and hang out with people like all the time, whereas usually it'd be like I need one a week and then I need time to like recharge. But unfortunately it's like if I only hang out with people once a week, I don't know that I'll like really get access to that community that I'm looking for and I know gives me a sense of like re-energizing. And I think that when it comes to like academic, like people who are really striving for like big academic goals, like as someone who was trying to get into med school, I think there's a lot of this conception that, you need to prioritize your schooling and you don't have time for like friends or
Mhm.
like loved ones or whatever it is. But it's like that time that you spend with your loved ones and with your friends is what gives you the passion and energy to then pour back into your studying and your work and everything else that you do in your life. And so I think we really should place more value on that and more emphasis on the fact that we should prioritize time that we spend with our community, time that we spend with people. And it's not wasting time. It's, spending good time, and it ultimately helps other aspects of our life as well. So I've definitely been working hard to inconvenience myself so I can build different communities.
I love that. You're talking about, hey, you're going to have to make a little bit of effort. Like all good things in life, you got to make a little bit of effort. You got to step a little bit, sometimes outside comfort zones. You got to push yourself a little bit to create that community too, right? Because now it's more than ever. It's so easy to kind of introvert and go inside, scroll on your phone, like, just get away from the world. But we need to push those limits a little bit. Again, not to put words in your mouth, but I hear you on that, and I'm glad you're doing that. And so, just tell me, as you mentioned, med school there. What are you doing right now? So, you're pre-med or you're in med school? What's going on?
I just started med school at McMaster this year, so it's
Oh,
been about a month.
congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Incredible, incredible. And what's that process like? So how many years? Walk me through it.
Med school is 3 years, and then you do well, actually, my med school is 3 years. Most med schools are 4 years, but McMaster is three. And then you apply for residency, and then you choose whichever one you want to do, and then you start med school. Or
So at what point do we call you doctor?
in 3 years.
3 years. That's so incredible. Amazing. And amazing too that we're going to have a doctor with such empathy and knowledge and real, that says that understands too that mental health is health, right?
Thank
So
you.
that's incredible, awesome. So final question for you, unless unless somebody comes back around, but we do this at the end of every episode, and this is kind of the big picture question, and that is, what are your hopes for the future of youth mental health in Canada?
Yes. My hopes for the future of youth mental health is that there's more space for people of different backgrounds and experiences to share how their experiences were, just to build more representation, to build more empowerment for us as youth to create change and make differences in the world. I think that is so important for us, like across Canada. We know we have lots of different identities and backgrounds, so I really hope that that's something that is integrated more. I also have hope that youth are just given more, steering power when it comes to mental health, when it comes to leadership and change, in terms of when they share their experiences, they're not asked to, water it down or make it tailored so that adults will pay attention or, have to be emboldened by an adult or by some other entity that makes them more valid. I think I really have hope that youth voices and experiences will be treated as valuable just because they're youth experiences and they're coming from youth themselves, and we know ourselves best ultimately. And so yeah, that's my hope for youth.
I want to thank you so much for kind of bearing your soul, coming on here, taking the time of your busy med school, which I'm sure is very, very busy. And I like what you said, man. Make sure you balance it out, right? Like, it sounds like you're doing that. A balanced human being is a better person, right? Like, and it takes the stress off. But you're welcome back anytime. You're our second guest, which we hope to be a long run of different young people come on and sharing their stories. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us to the end of another episode of Jack Amplified. Now, that's episode number 2. I guarantee you're going to be blown away by the quality of guests that we have, young people, experts, people with lived experience. It's a really, really cool and fun time. We have interesting conversations, just about half an hour, right? So we capture your attention span, then you could go on with your day. But please share widely, and you can find us wherever you find podcasts, so share that out. If there's one thing to take away from today's conversation, is that community is prevention, right? Belonging is prevention. Youth-led spaces like Jack chapters that we have. And if you want to learn more about Jack chapters, go to Jack.org, check out chapters as well as many of our other offerings as well. You heard about Jack Talks today. If you want to know more about that, go there to Jack.org. But it gives young people purpose. It builds resilience and belonging. And if you want to start a Jack chapter in your community, check us out at Jack.org, right? And you get that process started. Don't forget to follow us on all your socials and share widely. I'm Michael Braithwaite. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on Jack Amplified.